Hello and welcome to another edition of As a Service Andy. So today I'm going to be talking about the cloud. And this all really stems from this whole idea of certain realities do exist even though we may not choose to accept them. So I'm going to start off by telling you a little story. So one day back in high school, so a few years ago for me, for sure, I got together with a group of my buddies, and we used to love to go see concerts. And so, won't go into the details of which concerts we went to, but we used to love to go see concerts. And one of our friends who was a year older than us, he always drove. He was always Mr. Responsible, and he drove the other three of us, sometimes four of us. In his little Nissan Sentra, and we would go to concerts. And sometimes those concerts would be a very far distance away. And one time we get in the car and we're all in the car together, and my friend Ryan turns and he says, I just have a good feeling about everything. Everything's going to go smoothly tonight. We're going to be able to get there and find a parking spot, and everything's just going to be awesome. And the driver, the older gentleman, turned and he said, yeah, that sounds all wonderful and very peaceful-ish and whatnot, but certain realities will exist, even though we may not choose to accept them. And I've always thought about that. So, it's weird that you take a small lesson like that, all your years of high school, all your years of college, and you come out with these little snippets sometimes of things that really matter. And this is true for my day-to-day life. It's true in my parenting. It's true in everything that I do, that certain realities do exist, even though we may not choose to accept them. And what that simply means is perception doesn't dictate reality always, and we won't go totally philosophical into that. Perception informs our reality, and that's what it does. But when it comes to things like the word cloud and as a service, there's not like a place. There's really no good place that you can go on the internet where, there's been a board and they've gone through and they've said this is exactly what a cloud is. And in fact, I just got done doing a show with a friend of mine, Valor, at Life Size, and we just did a podcast just recently where we talked about some of the aspects of the cloud and why you would migrate from prem to the cloud, and listed all the do's and don'ts there and what's the benefits of it. So that being said, though, we always have to define what it is. What is a cloud? What does the cloud mean? And if you Google search it, the unfortunate thing is you get a list of responses, and one day I'll be technical enough on this deal to actually put this up on the screen for you, but it comes up with three terminologies. It's calling it the three main paradigms of a cloud. This is what the Google search says: is infrastructure as a service, which we can talk about. That's literally infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. And that's what it comes up as the paradigms for it. And you know what? Ironically, I agree with Google on this point that those are cloud. Those are cloud. That is, when you refer to the cloud, you're referring to any one of those three items and you use the cloud, you can use that term synonymously. The interesting thing, though, is if I have software as a service, but it's not on a platform as a service, and it's not running infrastructure as a service, then do I really have cloud? Or is it part cloud? Is it a partial cloud? And that's where we get into the certain realities do exist, even though we may not choose to accept them. If you're not running your software as a service on a platform as a service, then can you really consider it cloud? Maybe you can. This is a question. It's a question for you to go dig into and answer. I'm not going to necessarily answer all of them here, but it's stuff to think about. And then as you continue to do research, when you do research on the cloud, you come up with this other fun stuff. And I'm looking at my notes right now. So, and these are defined as in the cloud methodology: dedicated hosted, shared hosted, and hybrid hosted. Well, do those really run on a platform as a service or infrastructure as a service? So in about a minute and a half, you can be more confused from a Google search on what is cloud computing, what is the cloud. If you look up what is the cloud, you're going to see Cumulus and all the clouds in the sky. So you have to go into cloud computing, and then there again you're going to be bombarded with ads and different places you can go and different people trying to define it because everybody's defining it differently. So that brings me to really my next point of what realities do exist. What objective are you trying to accomplish? What do you want to solve? Typically, as my friend Valor said in our recent segment, is it's really a way of deferring costs, right? We talked about bananas in my last episode. If you haven't seen it, you can go back and look. As always, you can find all my episodes at aasandy.com. But yeah, we talked about bananas. It's, do you want to have the bananas, and do you want to be responsible for those bananas until they go bad? Or do you want to give that responsibility to someone else, have them maintain it, have them filter it down, and you pay for it monthly, and you're always getting the latest and greatest? And that's typically what you're looking for when you're going to the cloud. Is the old prem-based technology. There was a great. That's where I started. I started on prem-based technology. The cloud back then was a dream. There are certain cloud providers today that do platform as a service, like Azure and AWS and even Google Cloud, that 10 years ago, you would be totally remiss at putting your critical software on any one of those platforms. And today, you're almost remiss not to. So because they've upped their security, they've upped their scalability, they've upped their stability, all of them have been updated so much that they now supersede anything that I could put on-prem in my own co-hosted hybrid environment or on-location environment. And so that reality does exist now. Even though we may not choose to accept it, it does exist. Cloud-based technology is more secure, it's more stable, it's more extensible than your prem-based technology. Now the challenge is when you're looking at software as a service or infrastructure as a service or platform as a service, is that technology, are they converged together? So if I'm looking at software as a service, as I said before, is it on platform as a service? Am I getting those updates? Are they able to take advantage of all the past functionality that you can get with their software and be able to do those updates, do those upgrades, make it stable, make it extensible, make it scalable, right? Can they turn up an instance like that? Because here's the challenge. Some people will call their software as a service SaaS, and let's just say that it's based upon an older architecture like TDM or something that required physical connections. Is it then cloud at that point in time? If it's not on PaaS. If I have software as a service and I'm hosting it for you, I would call that my hosting for you, right? It's not at that point software as a service. In fact, an old competitor of mine who's no longer in business, they used to call all their stuff cloud, right? And they would always say it was as a service in everything that they did, all their literature and all that. But really what they did is they had a colo environment, they put in the servers, they managed those servers, and they fed them out to an individual. Now you go, well, Andy, that's it feels like the cloud, right? Yeah, it does. It absolutely does. Can they scale that the same way? No, they can't. They can't scale it the same way as if it was on a platform as a service, because they legitimately have to have somebody sliding a server into a rack, turning it up, turning it on, and maintaining it that way. They are the individual standing there. Now, do PaaS providers absolutely have those same people? Yes. But they've made it so that it's multi-tenant. They've made it so it's hierarchical. And they've made it so that they can scale it and you get shared resources out of it. So, yes, I'm a huge advocate of it. I mean, I really am. I don't care if you go with Google Cloud. I don't care if you go with Azure. I don't care if you go with AWS. I'll tell you we'll talk about the distinctives between the three. But the reality is those are only three of the many that are out there, by the way. Those are kind of the top players right now. But the ability to take advantage of what they have to offer and to offload that on you and put it onto a monthly reoccurring cost, it does change the game. It changes your business finances. It changes your technology. It changes the way you serve your customers. It makes things. I have yet to find a circumstance where it hasn't been an improvement for any one of our customers, let alone any customer that I've ever met. So now, 10 years ago, different story. It was absolutely problematic. Couldn't stand it. I mean, you were on some of these platform as a service and they were going down weekly. So, but today they've worked all that out. So ask yourself the questions. What do I want to accomplish with this? is this going to obfuscate some of the work that's done in-house and bring it somewhere else and offload that risk? You talk a lot about security, but risk offloaded is also a security thing too. This takes away the risk. I was talking to somebody who has some in-house software that could be moved to the cloud just recently, and they were like, oh my gosh, we're behind on technology. I've got IT people constantly working on it all the time. I've got engineers looking at it. I have to re-architect things continually. And by the way, I'm about 5 to 6 years behind my competitors in what I'm able to do for my customers because, just updating it is a chore. So it's just something for you to think about. Realistically, I want you to have a happy Thanksgiving, have lots of turkey, enjoy your time, and we'll see you next week.